Hey guys, it's GS Luke DFS bringing you guys my preview for the 2021 WGC Matchplay tournament here on Draftkings. It's the top players in the world, top 64, plus a few from 65 to 68 that got in due to a few withdrawals, which means we're going to see the best golfers going head to head in match play, which is really something to see. It really gets a lot of the golfers amped up. Obviously, the fans more involved. It's a little bit easier to follow, and there's more volatility. Obviously, in a one-on-one matchup, a lot more can happen as opposed to in an 155-man field where you pretty much have to be perfect. So it's exciting. It's exciting to watch. It's also a 5-day event with 7 rounds going to the golfers that make it to the final 4 and 5 for the Elite 8. So you get to see a lot of golf, a lot of really quality golf as well, which makes it one of the best events for fans and for the players as well. There's over a $10 million purse, so the players always love doing well at events like this. You see a lot of the big game hunters per se that do well here, and I'm really looking forward to it. So bracket was finalized this morning, so some golfers are going to have it easier than others due to the bracket format. We'll get to a couple of them here in a second, but the groups are already set, and if you aren't familiar with how it works in a match play tournament, they split all of the players into 16 groups of 4 golfers. There's going to be one of the top 16 golfers in every group, and then the rest of them were completely randomized. So you have some groups with a lot of the top golfers in them, and then you have some groups that have a lot of lower seeds in them mixed in with that one higher seed. So some players got a little bit of a better draw than others, and some even have a better quadrant to deal with than others. And we'll be talking a lot about quadrants here, but we'll get into some of the specifics here in a few. So it'll go from the 16 groups. There will be one winner from each group, bringing it down to 16, and then from there on, it will be a normal bracket with single elimination, single round tournament going on. There will also be a consolation match for the people that come in 3rd and 4th place. That's also important to note for fantasy purposes, as that will decide who comes in 3rd for positioning as well as 4th, along with all of the extra rounds and scoring as well. It is also important to note that the scoring for DraftKings is vastly different this week. Rather than it being based on birdies, eagles, birdie streaks, that kind of thing, it's based on holes won, and believe it or not, holes not won. When a golfer wins and wins in a drastic fashion in match play, they may not finish the last 6 to 7 holes, and you do get credit for that on DraftKings. So something important, is something I've taken into consideration with my projections, something that you guys should definitely take a look at if you're not familiar with the scoring changes. So like I said before, there could be a potential for 7 rounds of golf for people that make it the whole way to the final 4. So making sure that you actually pick those 4 golfers is going to be very important this week, which again is something we'll get to in more detail here in a second. First of all, though, talking about the golf course, it'll be at the Country Club of Austin, which is in Austin, Texas. It's a par 71, 7,082 yards, and again, a Pete Dye design, which is something that we saw at TPC Sawgrass and the players, and it's a world-renowned architect, obviously, someone that makes very difficult designs, which we'll obviously be taking into consideration this week. They'll be playing on Bermuda grass, which is something that you see a lot in Texas, and the rough is overseeded with Poana, which is something to note as it makes it a little bit more penal. So getting into the key stats this week aren't going to be quite as important, obviously, considering that we're using match play rather than traditional stroke play event. And for that reason, we're not going to weigh it the same this week. You're going to see my modeling has a lot more to do with match play success than it does based off these key stats. But it is something that we can use to break ties, in my opinion. So number 1 is going to be shot gains approach. It's routinely number 1 in our models. This isn't something that's new if you've been watching my videos every week. But the course is demanding. We know that. It's a Pete Dye design. There's going to be a lot of hazards around the greens, a lot of runoffs that lead you to low areas, and you aren't going to want to miss with your approaches. So it's important every week. It's going to be number 1 this week, especially due to the course difficulty. Number 2, and it really could be 1A, 1B here, is going to be putting. And that's because putting is huge in match play. Obviously, when you make a putt, it puts a lot of pressure on your opponent. On top of that, being able to putt helps you score, right? And those that are able to score on a consistent basis are going to do better in match play, as one foul swoop can knock you out of the tournament. So putters are going to be at a premium this week. And you've also seen that with our winners in the past few years. A lot of them have been good putters, most notably Kevin Kisner. So putting is going to be a second key stat this week. And number 3 is going to be birdie or better percentage, or opportunities gained, whatever you prefer when looking at that stat. And that's going to be just putting yourself in the right place to score. Obviously, there's going to be some of these matches that come down to a birdie fest, where both guys are hot, and it's going to come down to who makes more birdies. And it's my third key stat because I believe it really could be that tiebreaker between two great golfers. When you're dealing with the top 64 players in the world, you're going to be getting some tough matchups. A lot of times it's going to come down to who puts themselves in the best situation the most. Players like Xander, Patrick Reed are infamous for being very, very good in this category. So maybe one of them will pop up here in a second. Who knows? Before we get into some of the players I like, I just want to make a couple notes on strategy for this week. First of all, the top-ranked golfers don't necessarily make it out of their groups most of the time. It happens at about a 43% clip per average when we looked at this type of format for the match play. And why it's important to note is a lot of times when you're looking at a bracket, and especially like with the NCAA March Madness bracket, it's really hard to pick against the favorites in the first round. Sure, you have to pick a couple. There's obviously an Oral Roberts every year, obviously. It's really hard to predict. But in PGA Tour, especially with match play, where golf is so volatile, especially round to round, there's not going to be as many favorites winning. So I think making rules in your lineup building and whatnot to restrict the amount of first round wins for the favorites is important. I think maybe taking 8 to 10 of them may be the sweet spot for that. Something also important to note is that this is a home course for quite a few golfers this week. Jordan Spieth, Ryan Palmer, Scotty Scheffler all grew up in the area. They've surely played this golf course. I'm sure they have a lot more practice rounds than a lot of their competitors, so that's something to keep in mind. And Bryson also is getting a lot more talk and buzz this week, as he always does, because of his distance and that kind of advantage he may play in match play, which is something that may not be as striking at first, but when you think about it, having extra distance in match play is huge. Not only are you going to have easier shots into greens, if you know anything about match play in golf, you're hitting second when you're the one who's the furthest down the fairway. And if that's the case, you know exactly where your opponent hit their shot. And you can ask, why is that important? Well, if your opponent stuffs it to 1 foot, you're going to have to play a lot more aggressively, right? But if your opponent misses a green, you can play very conservatively, just aim at the middle of the green, 2-putt, and then the pressure's on them. So there's a lot of game theory involved. And someone like Bryson, who's not only long, but someone who's very intellectual like Bryson, is going to be using that to his advantage. So he's actually the favorite this week. I agree with that. I think he has a lot of win equity this week, but it's something to definitely keep in mind. I don't think he's the only one who's going to benefit from this. Almost all the PGA Tour pros are very, very high IQ, almost genius level academics. And obviously, there's a lot of long players in this field as well. So that's something to keep in mind and something that I'll be factoring into my analysis. That driving distance is a fourth key stat per se. Just a little bit of a strategy note I wanted to add in. I forgot to add in my original shooting in the video. Was when making your lineups, you need to avoid playing players, one, from the same group, but also from the adjacent group in a bracket, as you want to make sure that your players are meeting each other at the last possible second. In order to optimize that further, you also want to make sure that you only play 3 players from one side of the bracket. So you're further optimizing when your players can reach each other at the end of the tournament, so you can maximize your rounds played and get the best lineup in your GPP. So I thought that was important to mention. If you guys have any questions about how to do that on DraftKings or how to write groups in an optimizer, just let me know and I can help you guys in messages. So that's all. Getting into some of the players that I like this week. Number 1 is going to be Jon Rahm, coming in at $10,700, and he's going to be my spend up option. He's the 3 seed. All of you know him. He's one of the best golfers in the world. But more importantly, he seems to check every single box that I'm looking for this week. He has great approach play, gaining over 0.54 strokes per round in that category this year. He's also a great putter. He's gaining 0.21 strokes per round this year, which is actually below his career baseline. So there is some regression that we should expect to see there as well, which is another good thing to see. His birdie or better percentage, he's top 10 in the field. He's not elite because he does avoid so many bogeys, but he is top 10 in the field, which you like to see there. And he has a great attitude for match play. If you know anything about John Rahm, you know he's fiery. He loves to be energetic, loves to play into the crowd a bit. So I think that's only going to help him this week. And another thing that's great is that he's not really going to have the ability to be as mad when he plays. There's not going to be as many big scores, and even when they happen, they don't matter, right? Match play is scored on a hole-to-hole basis on who wins, and it's not by how many. So John Rahm can hit a wall in the water and just forget about it the next hole. So I love that for him as well. And the most important factor with John Rahm and what makes him by far the best play on the entire slate is his group. He is in an unbelievably easy group, and the group next to him, where he'll be playing the winner if he wins, is also a cupcake group. So just to get into that, he is grouped with Ryan Palmer, Shane Lowry, and Sebastian Munoz. They're all below 30th seeds in this event, and all people that have their issues coming in. First of all, Ryan Palmer missed the cut in his last event. Shane Lowry last week at the Honda was horrible on the weekend. And Sebastian Munoz is one of the most volatile golfers in the sport. I don't want to say he's a guarantee to get out of that group because there's no guarantees in golf. It's such a volatile sport. But he's definitely got the best chance to get through. I also like the group next to him. It's highlighted by Daniel Berger, who's injured. He may not even finish the group play portion of this event before withdrawing. He still gets paid even if he withdraws. He literally might just hit a tee shot and withdraw. He's done it before. So I like that as well. So he's going to be in a lot of my lineups. I love his ability to get to the Elite Eight. I think it's a lot higher probability than most golfers in the field. And I also like his chances to get to the Final Four. So he's going to be popular, but if you're missing a Final Four pick this week, you're not going to win the GPP. So I'm willing to eat the chalk on John Rahm because I think he is a great option this week. My second man in this week is going to be the big game killer, and that is Patrick Reed, coming in at $9,600. He's a 7 seed, so he's getting some respect this year, and he's just an absolute monster when it comes to match play. He's number one in the field of any current player when it comes to winning percentage at match play events, and he probably has the best attitude for match play in this field as well. He's not going to give anyone a putt, which means he's going to take full advantage of the volatility that comes to putting, and he's also somebody that loves match play. You can tell he gets fired up when he beats somebody. You can tell he's talking smack the whole time. He's just built for it. And if you look at the NCAA ranks where he played for his team at Augusta National, he went perfect in match play in college. He never lost a match play event. I think that's something to note. He hasn't quite been that good on the PGA Tour, obviously. He's still number one in winning percentage, but I expect him to win a couple of these match play events and kind of put his name back out there. He's likely going to be a bit unpopular as well because people don't normally like to spend in the $9,000 range this week. It's actually quite difficult to, given the pricing this week. But I think that's only going to help his ownership. I'm definitely going to have plenty of Patrick Reed, given his upside to just spark some magic and go on a run like he tends to do at a match play event like this. Going to my bread and butter play this week, so somebody that should be a staple of your lineups is going to be Paul Casey, coming in at $8,900. Again, you see he's a little bit more expensive than most of my bread and butter plays are, but the pricing is a little bit difficult this week. He comes in at a 17 seed, and he also checks every box but the putter this week. He has seen his putter improve of late, though. He has been a slightly positive putter. It is a .05 strokes gained per round putting, which is slightly positive, much better than his historical baseline. And he has the second highest win percentage in match play for the field. Number 3 is Louis, just to give you an idea, but only number 2 behind Patrick Reed. If you've seen him play, especially in person, you can tell why he's so good at it. He loves the moment. He absolutely loves to fire up the fans. He engages with the fans, loves to talk smack like Patrick Reed, and it's reflected in the stats as well. That's why I said this week I'm not going to be leaning on the key stats as much because they are important. Obviously, Paul Casey is a great ball striker, right? You have Patrick Reed, great ball striker when he's on his game. And obviously, John Rahm's an elite level ball striker. And that doesn't change with Paul Casey. But that's not what I'm leaning on this week. It's more of the intangibles that carry the model this week. And when it comes to intangibles, Paul Casey has those off the chart. He's just one of the highest winning percentage players in the field. And he also puts himself in plenty of spots to score. He's a very high birdie or better percentage, though he doesn't have enough rounds to qualify for the PGA Tour stats. He's up there in the field, I guarantee you, when it comes to percentage. And he's likely going to be under-owned as well due to his price point. So I like him this week. He's my bread and butter play. My value play for this week is going to be Will Zalatoris, coming in at $7,900 and the 40th seed. He's a new name in the field. This is his first time in a match play event, but he is a great iron player, so he fits the bill that way. He's the top in the field in birdie or better percentage. He goes absolutely nuclear with the birdies. While he isn't a great putter, he is actually gaining a few strokes this year as well. So kind of like Paul Casey there, where they're not historically great putters, they're doing it a little bit this year. So he's getting at a .07 stroke per round rate, which is a lot better than normal for him. And he's going to be avoided by a lot of players because he shares a group with Bryson. So Bryson DeChambeau, like I said before, probably should have been the favorite. But I think from a game theory perspective, it's very interesting to see that Will Zalatoris is probably going to get like no ownership. He could win the group, obviously, if Bryson has a few bad rounds, which he tends to have 1 or 2 per tournament. If they happen to happen in the group stage and he loses, I think Will Zalatoris is the one that wins that group. So if you're leveraging off of Bryson, I think Will Zalatoris is a great fit, but it doesn't stop there. So, and there's more, right? So outside of Bryson, he faces relatively no challenge to get to the Final Four if he beats Bryson. That's a big if, right? He has Finau, Hovland, and Morikawa all in the outskirts there, but they're all haven't done well in match play in the past. Obviously, Hovland and Morikawa haven't done it on the PGA Tour level, but on the NCAA level, they did not perform well. They didn't do that well for their schools. He has an easy schedule because all of them share his weakness, and in my opinion, he's a better ball striker than all of them. They all tend to putt bad. They are streaky putters at best, and so is Will Zalatoris. So if they're going to share a weakness and Zalatoris is popping better in models, I think he should be treated like one of the top members of the field. So he's going to be owned less. I love his statistical fit this week. And DraftKings obviously priced him up a little bit because he is at $7,900. So I think a lot of people are going to stay off of him, but I do think that that price is deserving. He's one of the best players in the field. People are just lagging behind. And my diamond in the rough this week is going to be Mark Leishman, coming in at $6,800. He's the 36th seed, so he's priced actually, well below where he should be. And I believe he has the best ability in all of golf to hit recovery shots. He thrives when he has to hit, shots that he has to use his imagination, and you've seen it a lot in tournaments. I mean, he's won tournaments using the recovery ability. His major weakness this year is off the tee, which is a little bit minimized here. While distance is a little bit of an advantage, Mark Leishman isn't short by any means. He's just a little bit more inaccurate. It is a little bit minimized at a course like Country Club of Austin, where the rough isn't really long. It is a little bit penal because of the complexity of the Poana overseed, but he knows how to play it because he's from Australia. He used to play in tons of crazy conditions. He used to purposely, and I actually heard an interview from him where he said he used to purposely put himself in the hardest situations he possibly could growing up, just because that was fun, and that's how he likes to play golf. For me, that breeds tons of confidence and success with match play. You're going to be in situations where you're behind the 8 ball and you have to pull something off to have the hole or to win the hole, and Mark Leishman thrives in those situations. He also has a relatively high win percentage when it comes to match play, winning 70% of his events, and I like the track record. I like that he seems to thrive when he's behind the 8 ball, and he also has a clear path if he can get past DJ. DJ is going to be one of the highest owned golfers, which means Leishman's going to be likely under-owned. And if he gets past DJ, he has a relatively easy route to the Final Four as well. His 2 biggest threats would be Webb and Terrell Hatton, who also aren't long off the tee, so they share his weakness. A little bit of a theme going on there with Zalatoris and Leishman. And I think he can beat them head-to-head. He has a little bit of a better recovery ability, and he can get hot with his irons and hopefully keep up with them. So that's all for this week, guys. Subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this, and let me know if you enjoyed by liking this video. Thanks.